of people incarcerated that have lost their rights. The majority of people who have lost their rights are living among us in our families, in our congregations, in our communities. Thank you, Desmond.
You have a question? Please,
Kathy Betancourt. Reggie, thank you for coming home. Your dad was a good political mover, shaker, and a great gentleman. So he'd be very proud of you right now. You folks have called attention to the most important point made today. There are two of them. The first one is why it must be in the Constitution. It's not a pregnant pig issue. It's in a constitutional section that needs to be addressed. And two, it's not a black issue. But the question I want to ask you, so you can give us all ammunition when we go home, because we're going to have arguments with our families about this stuff. Put a face on it. Please tell us a situation that you have torn your hair out, without naming the person, you don't have to, an individual who should have their rights more than anything in the world that you know has been deprived.
I'm going to give you a better face, and I think it is a really better face. I'm going to give you a face of a 70-year-old war veteran, a gentleman who put his life on the line to protect our democracy, and when he came home after defending our country, wrote a bad check. And for 30 years, he was not even allowed to vote. And there are thousands of veterans that have put their bodies on the line in the war on terror, in Afghanistan, Iraq, Kuwait, Vietnam, men and women who have served our country, but they come back with PTSD, or maybe they come back with an addiction problem, they get in a bar fight, and because they made a simple mistake, these heroes are told that they're no longer a citizen of this country. That's the face I like to put on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Desmond.
I'm going to cede my time to Desmond so he could expound on the issue of giving you clear examples of some of the crimes that result in an individual losing their rights, because I think that's very powerful information.
Let me give you another face of a gentleman that lived right down the street from here. And excuse me if I could tear up a little bit, because this elderly man, I thought he could vote, and I walked him to the polling location to vote. And when he went there, they all of a sudden told him he couldn't vote. And when we checked, he couldn't vote because 10 years ago, he had a felony conviction for driving with a suspended license. And when I looked in this man's eyes, I seen my father. And for some reason, that polling location was right across the street. That library on MLK, right across the street from that polling location, was a graveyard. And the only thing I could think about was this man was going to die before he even get the right to vote back. That's a face that stays in my mind, and it needs to stay in everybody else's mind. American citizen being that denied the opportunity that people would die and not even be able to have their voices heard.
Thank you, Desmond. Sean?
That's powerful, and it's similar to the face I'm going to give you. We all as candidates and future candidates that are in this room a lot, we all knock on doors. We all go door to door and ask people for their vote to their face. And the interactions I had with people when I would knock on the door, and someone would answer the door, and they were someone who couldn't vote because they had a felony. And you could see it in their face that they didn't feel whole, that they did not feel like they were 100% there. And it was the same face I always got when I knocked, no matter what neighborhood I was in, no matter what part of Tampa I was in. If I got someone at the door that was a felon that didn't have their rights restored, they would look at you with kind of, well, I can't vote, so I can't participate in this fundamental part of American society. And that's sad. It's hard for us to emotionally connect and understand how painful that is. When someone comes to your door to ask for your vote and your response has to be, I can't vote. That's painful for that person, for that individual. And it's permanently painful. It's painful every time there's a vote. It's painful every time there's a federal election, there's a state election, there's a referendum, there's anybody running. Every year it's painful because it happens over and over and over again. And And that's what I think about when we think about this issue.
Thank you, Sean. Andrew?
Sean and Desmond answered the question well, so I'm going to take it from a different end. How do we arm ourselves with a persuasive argument? We have to debunk the myth. Desmond mentioned it before. There is a myth perpetuated that this is an issue about African American voters, that this is a political issue. I'm sorry, but if you view this issue through the lens of Democrat or Republican, who gets elected versus who doesn't, you are putting party before country. The way there is bipartisan support in Washington, D.C. for this. Not just the Koch brothers. Lindsey Graham, John McCain, Rand Paul, 3 conservative Republicans are on board with a lot of Democrats on this. Unfortunately, as Sean said, locally, a bill can't even get out of committee, can't even get a hearing. Our local leaders in Florida have simply failed. There has been a failure of leadership on this issue, and that's why Desmond and everyone here in this room is going to change that.
Thank you. Desmond?
I think of a young man from Safety Harbor. This is a real case. UF Law has written about it, and Alex will remember this. Tough upbringing. Parents had substance abuse problems. At 18, he was caught underage drinking. He was charged. He was put on probation. Adjudication was withheld. Buddy of his was getting beat up at a Subway restaurant. He threw a punch to help his friend, which I think most people would do. He was charged with felony aggravated assault instead of misdemeanor battery. So part of this is right on the front line, the law enforcement officer. He or she can change people's lives by, do you arrest them? What do you arrest them for? Is it a notice to appear, or are we booking you, et cetera, et cetera? So crime number 2 violated probation on crime number 1. He was sent back and adjudicated guilty on both. He had now 2 convicted felons. UF undergrad accounting, great grades. Master's in accounting, great grades. Married, homeowner, father, etc. He was going to be a financial officer with a public company in New York, and he came to us and said, I can't do that without my rights restored. Governor Christ and Alex Sink and Commissioner Charlie Bronson heard that story from me, but everybody doesn't have a lobbyist to tell their story and a lawyer. And before they left office in December 2010, they granted that young man, who's a terrific father and professional and white, and I get 50 or 60 of these calls and emails a month. It is absolutely not just an African American or Hispanic problem. Yes, there are African Americans and Hispanics who are disproportionately dragged into the criminal justice system, but from the calls I get, a lot of those folks are just people who made a mistake 10, 15, 20 years ago, and it crosses every socioeconomic and ethnic and religious and geographic boundary in this state.
Thank you, Reggie.
Yeah, Mike Fett here. I've been with the ACLU for a long time, retired Army Colonel. I want to commend the panel for their insistence on the idea that every ex-felon should automatically get their rights back when they've completed. However, sometimes the perfect solution is the enemy of a very good solution, which has more opportunity to pass and actually get done. Could you clarify what crimes are not included on this amendment so everybody will be very sure, because I don't think you did that.
Yeah, well, let's just read it together. I
That's
think
right.
it's on your
Rich.
table. When in doubt, we have a rule as lawyers, read the actual language.
When in doubt.
Article 6, Section 4 of the current Florida Constitution says the following. No person convicted of a felony, comma, or adjudicated in this or any other state to be mentally incompetent, comma, shall be qualified to vote or hold office until restoration of civil rights or removal of disability. That's the current Constitution. That's why Desmond can't just not vote. Can't, did you take the Florida bar and pass it? Can't even take the Florida bar and pass it, notwithstanding that he successfully completed FIU Law School. The language that's being added, that's underlined, again, need 700,000 signatures by February 1 to be on the November 2018 ballot to get hopefully 60% of the vote, adds the following. Except as provided in subsection B of this section, any disqualification, the one I just described, from voting arising from a felony conviction shall terminate, and voting rights shall be restored upon completion of all terms of sentence, including parole or probation. Then it goes on to exempt murder and felony sexual offenses. So I think it's a good balance. Some people think it doesn't go far enough. Some people, frankly, think it goes too far. I have a question of the ACLU. Is the rumor true that y'all are going to put $5 million in this? Did y'all bring the checkbook?
Thanks, Reggie. Andrew?
First of all, Colonel, thank you for your service. One of the issues we have is not just what we think of the worst of the worst crimes, but the vast majority of felonies are people, lower level felonies, who have served their time and have gone to the prison, and they've completed their probation. And guess what the single biggest hurdle is for the restoration of rights? Money. They have to pay court costs. They have to pay fees. They have to pay fines. There's surcharges upon surcharges. Clerks' offices are allowed by state law to contract out who can then charge a 40% surcharge on people to go collect those. The difficulty we have in people getting their rights restored today is largely financial. Now, granted, we need to change the laws we've been discussing, but even under the current law, what we have today is a modern-day poll tax.
Thank you, Andrew. Representative Shaw?
We've answered that question pretty well. I'm going to cede my time to Desmond because he's the man.
Desmond?
All right, it looks like I got 3 whole minutes. I won't forget it. So, first of all, I need to ask a question. I need strong audience participation. How many of you all have ever purchased like those balloons for happy birthday balloons, get well soon, congrats, raise your hand in the air. Or gone to a memorial with white balloons, keep your hands in the air, keep your hands in the air. How many of you all have inadvertently or intentionally released those balloons in the air? Keep your hand in the air. Turn around and look at everybody that have their hands up. That's the face of a felon. Right? So if you want to know what face to put on it, here it is right here.
Keep your hands up.
Now, Andrew, be nice.
And the reason why I bring this up is because so much focus is placed on violent offenders, right? When they really only account for like a minuscule amount of people who have lost their rights. When we exclude murderers and felony sexual offenders, they account for less than 2% of the total amount of people who have lost their rights. Most people have lost their rights for nonviolent offenses. If you like lobster, who likes to trap lobsters? You know the tail. If you catch a lobster and the tail is too short, that's a 3rd-degree felony in the state of Florida. If you trespass on a pier, a couple did it in St. Pete's Pier. Trespass on a pier, that is a 3rd-degree felony. If you're trying to take a shortcut to get to your office, back to your office from lunch, and you happen to walk through a construction site, that is a 3rd-degree felony. And if you're arrested and prosecuted and convicted, you would lose your rights for life. You'll be in the same position I am in, the same position a murderer is in, the same position a sexual offender is in. There's no distinction. All right, and so these are some of the things that we must keep in mind and not get caught up in, oh, this violent offender, oh, this Democrat thing, oh, this black thing. It's about pure and simple. When you finish and you pay your last mortgage payment, do you expect to still continue to get bills in the mail? When you pay your last car note, do you still expect to be continuing to pay? How would you feel? And so no matter what an individual has done, once they serve their time, once they pay their debt back to society, then they should be a stamp saying paid in full. That's just pure and simple. When Christ, for those of you who attend church, when Christ was on the cross, and that criminal asked him to be saved, Christ didn't tell him he had to wait 5 or 7 years. He said, this day ye shall enter into paradise. That sits at the foundation of our beliefs. Whether we're from the Jewish faith, the Islamic faith, or the Christian faith, forgiveness, redemption, and restoration sits at the heart of our faith and our belief. The other thing that Jesus didn't do, when that criminal asked him to be saved, he didn't say, what did you do? He didn't. The man has paid his price. He's repaid his debt. Give him his rights back.
Thank you, Desmond.
Pat Kemp, Hillsborough County Commissioner. I want to know, as I understand it, there's, and I don't understand it actually, but in the 1860s, these laws were passed, part of Jim Crow, passed across the country. And now only 3 states continue to do this, Kentucky, Iowa, and Florida. What has it been, why are we such an outlier in this regard?
Thank you, Pat. Desmond? you
Point of
first.
correction, there's 4 states. Virginia is included in that. It just so happened that they have a governor that has decided to make use of his clemency power in a very bold and righteous way. You ask why Florida is, I mean, they could be so many different answers, and most of them have always been leaning towards political, but I venture a different way. I'd say who profits more, right? Because the reality is, when you talk about individuals that are losing their right to vote or getting incarcerated, believe it or not, there's people in Putnam County. Putnam County convicts a higher percentage of its citizens than Dade County. You would think that would be the opposite, but when you're talking about conservative and rural areas, there's a higher percentage of conviction rates among the citizens. At the end of the day, what I look at is who profit from preventing an individual to successfully reintegrate back into the community, and the only one that does that is the private prison industry. There you go. Right? That's who profits. And once we're able to remove that influence, right, then we're on the road of actually bringing some changes, not only in felon disenfranchisement, but criminal justice reform as well.
Thank you, Desmond.
So it's already been stated that the majority of the individuals who are disenfranchised are white, not necessarily minority, but that minorities are disproportionately impacted by the current rule that we have in policy that we have in Florida. The bottom line is that when post-Reconstruction, many southern states instituted a lot of criminalized behaviors that they thought were disproportionately committed by minorities with the sole intent of disenfranchising them. And, you know, Desmond used the analogy of a cancer starting in one part of the body and spreading. The original intent was to discriminate against and disenfranchise minorities, but it now impacts all of us. The individuals who are disenfranchised, it impacts Florida and impacts our nation. Because citizen participation is at the heart of a healthy democracy, and these individuals are not able to fully participate. And our democracy will continually be at risk should these individuals, all individuals, not able to fully participate.
Thank you, Representative Sean.
I think it is, I mean, it's not political for me, but I think the answer is, let's just be honest with each other, I think it's political. And to Desmond's point, the narrative is that this will help more Democrats get their rights restored. That's the narrative. Whether that is accurate or not doesn't really matter. The narrative is that. So when the narrative is that affects what happens in Tallahassee. And it's just that simple. And so, and I want to say this, and I don't want to get in trouble, but Commissioner Kemp, thank you for your leadership on the Confederate statute. While I have the mic in my hand, is Tom Scared in the room? Yeah. Give them a standing ovation. Yell at me after the meeting for doing that. I'm sorry, but that needs to be done. And thank you. Thank you. That's important. And quickly, because I used up some of my time for that, but I know you'll be nice. Quickly, a lot of people under these current political circumstances, I get asked a lot, what can I do? How can I get involved? I'm frustrated. This is an example of something you can do that doesn't have D or R on it. Help get petitions signed, help your friends get involved in this effort. When you want to know what can I do to make a difference, this is one of those things. This is not a candidate. This is not a political party. I know a lot of people are mad at people like me, people that are elected officials. This is something you can do. You can go to your church and get people to sign a petition. You can go to your civic group and get people to sign a petition. do that. That's how you can get involved and feel like you're doing something good. Because I know in these times, maybe you need that, and you need it to not be connected to us sometimes. Help Desmond get these signatures so we can do what we said we need to do here.
Thank you, Sean. Andrew?
Pat, your question was sort of where we are today. I look at this as state attorney from a little different perspective. My mission as your state attorney is to promote public safety and promoting fairness and justice in the system. And